Hey.
Oh. Hey, there you are.
All right.
There you are. We even had a countdown for this, Mick. I mean, so it's got to be quite substantial.
Yeah, it's very, very exciting. Finally, we're going live. Welcome to our $1 million broadcast studio, and welcome to the Flooring by the Numbers show. We're very happy to see you here. I see we've got some live viewers. So welcome to the show, and we're going to have this show every Wednesday, 11 till 12. So if you find this a good show, you can be with us every week. And I think what's going to happen is the show is going to be recorded on our YouTube channel, so you'll be able to watch it later at your leisure. But Andre and I are finding our way through the live broadcast situation, so we don't know what's going to happen today, Andre.
No idea, Mick. And I think I've got stage fright, so I'm trying to sort of get over that as well.
Okay. Well, we'll take a few minutes just to let people work out how to get a link to our show and join us here live. But perhaps we can just talk a little bit about the genesis of the show and why we wanted to do this.
Yeah, I think Mick. Here's the thing. There seems. I mean, we've spoken a lot about this, and it's gone all over the place. But it seems to me that there isn't really a lot of how we connect in this industry. You know what I mean? I mean, of course, we have our industry groups and things like that. But really, more connecting on a sort of one-to-one basis, talking about things that are reasonably topical and areas that we can hopefully share and create more of a community. And I know we compete with each other and blah blah blah, but it really is a community, and it is a unique community. I mean, we love this community. There's some great people in this space, and they do a good job and they really work hard. And so I think if we could, hopefully with this environment, I think it's just a way for maybe us to share some of the things that we're finding in organizations, those best practices that we will speak a lot more about that. But I'm hoping that it's going to be of some value to people.
Yeah, it's going to be fun. I mean, we're especially privileged because we've gotten to go into a lot of organizations. I mean, I don't know how many it is, 60, 75, 80, and we're working with some in a very intimate level. Some we've actually looked at some of their financial numbers. So we've got a really good grasp of where we think best practices are, where some of the challenges are. And, we love this industry. So we wanted to give back a little bit with this show, share some ideas with you. And hey, at some point, if you want to be a guest on the show, we're going to be interviewing, people.
Lots of people, aren't we? I mean,
we got
with different topics, and I think that's the part that I'm going to really look forward to. We're GCs, and to try and get a bit of rough and tumble type things. You know what I mean? I think that'll be very exciting.
All right, fantastic. Okay, well, look, one of the let's start with a little bit of talking about our industry and share some of the reasons why we think it's a great industry, and what are some of the attributes. And we've got a couple of slides here. Now, I don't want to. This show is not about being a slide.
Yeah, please, guys. We're going to be doing a lot of this. So,
and Andre was very nervous when he said.
Oh man, please,
Hey, so I'm looking at the slide count. We've actually got.
That's how seldom we do slideshows, but anyway,
right. But this is a little bit of fun. This is why we like flooring. Look. The first thing is you can't buy a floor on Amazon, right?
Right. Well, at least not yet. But I mean, really, Mick, I can't see this happening in the near future. I mean, so I mean, really, because if you think about it, why do we like this industry? I mean, because there are certain things that it's very difficult to disrupt in certain areas. You get this. I mean, look what's happened to the retail industry. I mean, it's completely been disrupted. When you look at our industry, there are certain real fundamentals that make disruption very, very difficult.
And I love that you brought that point out, because as we go through on this show and we talk to people, I mean, I really would like to understand what are some of the industry disruptors, because there have been some shifts in the industry. Probably won't talk a lot about this today, but the consolidation, on the vendor side has really changed the industry dynamic. But do think about, guys, what are some of the factors that are going to disrupt your industry? I mean, we'll talk a little bit about M&A activity, merger and acquisition. People are getting acquisition scaling, but right now, as Andre said, you've got a pretty. That's why we love it, because it's very robust. The second thing here is you can't outsource your installation to China. So this beating us down.
I love this part of it. I mean, you really can't. I mean, in fact, you can't yes, you can outsource components of internally, but really, so that element is just gone out of this industry. I mean, virtually, today, look how many industries have outsourced stuff. Virtually, they even their core capabilities they're outsourcing. You can't do this with this industry, and I mean, this to me was, one of the things, Mick, how long have we been part of this? I mean, it's been a while now, hey? And I mean, it's about.
Well, I think it. I'll tell you how long it's been. Your and my hair was a different color when we started.
Hey, at least I've only just got some hair, so yeah.
And I'm thinking, we've got to change some of our website photos, because I don't think we look like that anymore.
Yeah, I know that's going to happen at some point. It's just put it on the to-do list. But yes, this is really now it doesn't mean we're not influenced from a global perspective. Our raw materials and things like that. So the supply chain is obviously impacted by the global community. So yes, there is impact, but we cannot outsource from China, which can't do Amazon. Can't the major disruptors that have happened.
Hey, and the good news about floors is people walk on them.
Yeah, when you think about it.
and they get scrapped. So there's a recycling. That market is continually looking. Just the replacement of floors is huge, and then there's new construction. So there is always opportunity for a commercial flooring company, right?
And that's the beautiful thing. And to me, Mick, this is part of when you talk about opportunity, and often you sometimes, actually it's very interesting, you sometimes get people that feel that there is just an abundance of opportunity in this industry, and then there's others that feel not so much. You know what I mean? So it's very interesting to even understand the individual perspective around opportunity. But yeah, I mean, if you think about it, there's always going to be a need for a floor. Always, what's on it might change slightly over time, but there'll always be this need, and therefore, I mean, that's a nice part about it. Even in sort of whatever you want to call it, the 2008 area, the flooring industry was fairly resilient. I mean, look, everybody was impacted. COVID, everybody was impacted, but we are relatively resilient to significant economic impactual type environments, and that's part of that's exciting in a way, So And I'd love to talk later on. We're going to talk a little more about barriers to entry. So everybody believes that there is no barrier to entry. As long as you've got a carpet knife, you're good. You've got a carpet knife, you're good. Well, that's absolutely nonsense. There are incredible barriers to this industry. So, and we'll look at the profile of the industry, and we'll actually just stress test that a little bit. But I love that.
Yeah, and Andre, you came up with a really good point. We didn't talk about this ahead of time. This is a live show, guys, so we're going to go in lots of different directions. But I love the comment you made about how people see opportunity, because we work with a lot of sales teams, and if you think about it, if floors are recycling every 7 years and new construction is going up, I mean, the market for floors is just huge. So there's just almost unlimited potential. And if you look at it that way, there's plenty of opportunities, yet we get some salespeople who think, there's no opportunity in their space. Well, we've just got to go and, put ourselves in front of those people, put ourselves in front of the right GCs, put ourselves in front of the end users, because everybody needs floors, and the floor makes the difference to a building. It might only be 2%, of the overall spend on a project, but it's 98% of the sizzle, the look, and the experience. So it makes a big, huge difference. So we've got to talk on a different episode, Andre, about how we think about opportunity, where that opportunity exists, the mindset. Because for the commercial flooring company, I mean, I know we've had a tough time, but the opportunity set is very, very rich indeed.
Yeah, and I think here's the thing. When we talk about opportunity, we also think about innovation, right? And people don't really. Well, no, I'm not saying. A lot of times there's sort of a feeling of limited innovation, right? But I think there's so many different ways that we can innovate if we really think about it. And when we innovate, and we innovate in a way that really sort of facilitates growth, suddenly this becomes an attractive industry. I mean, a lot of times people say, well, it's people our age that are in this industry, basically. What's next? You know what I mean? New people don't. What's it? New people? Is there such a thing as new people? Well, those young people, I suppose, they are new, aren't they? They don't find. I mean, or we've heard comments that they don't find this industry attractive. But it's because we haven't made it attractive in many ways.
I mean, fabulous. I mean, we were talking with one of our clients the other day. Younger people are very conversant with technology. They don't know an era when they didn't have an iPhone, and they had all of that computing power. And so the ability to do virtual walkthroughs, the ability to design things online and share that virtually, I think if we bring the technology to bear and we create all that innovation, it is a fantastic place for young people. As you say, Andre, it's exciting.
Great career opportunities. And
yeah,
here's the thing, for people that think they can't make money in this industry, that is absolutely a misnomer. I mean, don't you like that word? That is a very.
That's a big word for you. That's a big. I won't ask you to spell it because I know that's not your strength.
No, but really, I mean, Mick, if you think about it, and here's the thing, if when I see the younger guys come into this industry and really flourish, I mean, we've seen a few of these examples. Isn't that so exciting to witness that? It really is an area where you can have an incredible career.
You can, and Andre, I when I lived in a small town in England, and nobody really moved out of the town, and I was one of the first people in my extended family to go off to university. And
right.
when I went off to university, I met with lots of different people who completely intimidated me about their worldliness. I was very, small-minded. I'd only had a very limited experience. So I always felt for a long time that, I would mandate that, my children would go off to university. But, today, what I've seen is, a couple of my children did, and one decided that he didn't, and he's moved into the trade. And at the end of the day, certainly from a North American perspective, the amount of student debt that you can pile up to get a degree that doesn't really differentiate you from many, many millions of other people getting a degree. Whereas if you go into a trade, you're learning a craft, you get paid very, very well, you don't incur any debt. And if you want to be a business person and run your own enterprise, it's a fabulous career. It's a subject we need to get into on a different one, because we could go into that at some great level and passion and conviction.
Right, and if you're in the right environment, in the right organization, with the right type of leadership, I mean, we've seen some really good examples of some great leaders. The ones that really allow you to be entrepreneurial, allow a degree of risk. So I think part of the problem with the industry is we're a little bit staid. You know what I mean? It's this is the way you do it, all right? Because our forefathers did it this way, etc. And the new blood that's coming into this industry doesn't understand any of that. And they really are reshaping. They are reshaping the way things are being done. I mean, as we see it.
I think a theme that we need to talk about, on other episodes as well, would be, how do you develop those leaders? How do you bring them up in the organization and get that new blood and new insight and new thinking? I know we talk to a lot of owners who are worried about succession planning and handing the business off. We get involved in a lot of that. But in terms of you made me smile with your comment about, if you think you've got a carpet knife, you've got a business. As you say, Andre, there is a barrier to entry to this business. You do need a specific, it's a craft, and it's complex, laying a floor and getting all those finishes right and doing it in a way that you can make money and that your end customer is happy with that whole experience.
Oh, look, there's no doubt about it. I mean, Mick, I spoke once with, one of the CEOs of one of the largest companies. I mean, I'm not going to tell you to mention what, and he said to me, why would I pay for a flooring company? Why would I want to buy even a floor? I could just go in there and, hire some salespeople and you know what? It doesn't work that way. It just does not work that way. So, the barrier is very strong, and we very much underestimate many times those relationships that are existent in many of these organizations who've had customers for 10, 15, 20 years, and there is a degree of loyalty, even though, we'll talk a lot about, the quote and hope world and all that stuff, but there is a degree of loyalty, and that's valuable. So we're going to have many episodes on value and how do we manifest value, and how do we what do we do if we want to sell our business? How does that work, and all that sort of stuff. So there's some good things that we're going to talk about there. But at the end of the day, you can build incredible value in this space if you choose to do so.
Right, and then I think I've got a couple more slides. I'm going to make this one full screen, Andre, just because it's quite small to read. But you mentioned this earlier, that the commercial construction business and therefore commercial flooring is more robust in economic downturns. So you see here, you might not be able to see this, but this at this point, 2008, 2009, that was the whole recession era. This top line is what happened to residential construction spending. You see how precipitous that was. And this dotted blue line is, commercial flooring, end user type of construction. And you see the dip wasn't as significant or as steep, and the recovery was, a little faster. So we're a little bit more resilient, and certainly as you and I have seen, people have been hit hard over the last year. Backlogs are down about 20%, but hey, we're still in business, and people still need floors.
Yeah, I mean, you talk about backlog, and we've got to talk a lot more about backlog. What's more valuable? A long cycle backlog or a short cycle backlog, and how do we run our business sort of around our backlog and use that as a key mechanism. But anyway, I'm off subject again. So
we have one last slide, and then we're done with slides. So you'll be happy about that. And
thank goodness, mate. Yeah, geez, man.
But I think it has some interesting information. A lot of people would know this. Is we've estimated that there are about
Mick, we've got somebody on the thing, and they requested to see the previous graph again.
So, Hello, Abby. Good to see you.
You know what? Let's be sort of, I don't know, what's it, audience focused. I'm not sure what the right word is.
This is construction spending. And Abby, thanks for the question. I was just trying to illustrate that commercial is a little bit more robust than residential, and this whole episode is recorded, so you'll be able to see the past recordings. And Abby, I've got your email, so I'm just going to email you, these slides as well, so you've got them to hand, so you can look at those at your leisure. So thank you for that. A little bit. So we should send Abby a gift, Andre. She's the first person to interact with the live show. Right now. So that's great.
Oh, good. Anyway.
Fantastic. And as I say, I think I got one more slide. This is a numbers slide. Probably about 2,100 companies. We think the market's about 26 billion. So if you average it out, it's about, the average company is 10 million. No single flooring contractor has more than 2% market share, and the aggregate share of the top 10 is less than 10%.
This is big, Nick. I mean, to me, I'm really trying to compile a bit of data around this, because you think about this. This is, I don't believe, is industry typical. In the context, normally there's a concentration of sort of these very big gorilla players. We don't really, yes, we have some gorillas, there's no doubt about it, and we'll talk about that on another one of your slides that you're so proud of. But anyway, but if you think about it, there's no real significant concentration yet, and the emphasis is yet. But the reality is here that because of that, what does that mean? I mean, so you mentioned there's 2,100 companies. The average, what did you say, $10 million? Well, that's an average. I think the median is going to be, I think, very different. So you've got this concentration of most probably those companies of between 20 million and let's call it 100 million. Are sort of they let's put it this, of the actual total market, they would be dominating a significant portion of that market. So there's lots of sort of, let's call them semi-large companies,
right? And you
large in our industry.
And you mentioned the gorilla. We have a gorilla. How about that?
A gorilla.
Like that?
Geez,
there are some big gorillas now. Hey,
anyway.
if your company's over 100, if your company's over $100 million, and we haven't got you on the list, I do apologize, but one of the things about this industry is a lot of privately held companies. The data's a little opaque. We've been fortunate to be able to peer behind the scenes on a lot of them, but there aren't very many people who have reached the scale of above 100 million. And these numbers are approximate. We've gotten those numbers from places like, Flooring Weekly, their own websites. And of course, on their own website, they're going to state a number. We can't verify some of that. Some of the companies we've been behind the scenes are a little bit more accurate, but not many companies that have got to that level of scale, Andre.
Right. No, I mean, actually, Mick, hang on. We were in the middle of one conversation, then you moved into another piece of the conversation.
Hey, it's a live show.
Conversation. Well, so let's go back to see that you want the damn slide. Let's go to the previous slide. All right.
It's good because
this is really work, right?
In the broadcast studio, I've got control, so I get to. I finally get to temper Andre. Otherwise, he'll be, all over. So you wanted to go back, okay?
Right. Okay. So yeah, I mean, so first of all, 2,100 companies, and I mean, I think that is a reasonable, accurate thing. Now, if you think about the concentration of those companies, how many members Starnet? 140 something members, somewhere around there.
Yeah, I think they're more than that.
You think a little more than that? Okay.
They're about 180, aren't they?
No, I don't know. I'm not so sure about that. I don't think so. But it's somewhere in that range. And then you've got Fuse, which is, it's also somewhere a little bit smaller, but not a hell of a lot. Two great industry areas. But what I'm trying to say in that space there, which I think those are the sort of more dominant, let's call it industry representatives as such. You've only got maybe 500 companies at the very most that are sitting in that space, right? Mm-hmm. And then you've got everywhere else. Okay, so to me that's quite interesting on its own. And the next thing that is there. I mean, is if you think about the way that the spread of all of this, the ability to grow a little bit is incredible. You heard Curtis Blanton on what's his Ken Parr show. I mean, hey, the guy grew about 40% in 1 year. So, when people say that this is a difficult industry to grow in, I think they're limiting themselves by their own, belief system. So, we want to break some of those limitations a little bit. Yes, we know that the total industry is not growing, but or not significantly growing, but maybe a little bit more than the GDP, but not a lot more. But if you think about it, Mick, that the ability to grow is not because of lack of business. And that is hopefully one of the cardinal things that we're going to be focusing on. Anyway, let's get back to that screen, Mick.
You want my slides again now, do you?
Oh, there you are. We're back to that. Oh, there you are. I think it's more like a screen, I mean, isn't that more sort of scientific as such? Okay. Right. So I think, Mick, we've got to talk a little bit about the industry. We've got to talk a little more about, what are those areas of disruption? Because I think the areas of disruption, here's the thing: it's going to be more internally driven, not externally driven. I think it's going to be internally driven. And really, the other thing that I think is in many cases. Now we've seen some cases where it's not, but in many cases, I don't think a lot of let's call it the word owners, don't consider strategic planning as a important component or as a critical component of their business success. And and those that do, it's a one-day event and forgotten. And that is the one aspect that's a little bit different in this industry. How we look at strategic planning and how we design our culture around it, is I think, an enormous area of opportunity. And we're going to talk a lot more about that going forward in terms of, what is best practice and all that sort of stuff. But you know, we need to be able to be better at how we strategically drive our business, right?
Yeah, and I think if we look at some of these, gorillas in the marketplace, kudos to them. They seem to have done some strategic thinking. I mean, just in terms of the robustness and the attractiveness and the return on investment for this industry. Spectra. Who owns Spectra, right? It's a Berkshire Hathaway company. It's a Warren Buffett investment. I mean, he sees that challenge around barrier to entry, and what they're doing.
If he likes this business, then there is something here. You know what I'm saying? So, and he's said this for a long time. Hey, I mean,
yeah, no, they're big and they're using their scale to their advantage. I mean, this isn't supposed to be the absolute critique of the industry, but we do know and we do see that Diversified clearly has a strategy around acquisition and growth. Great floors, very, very strong in the Pacific Northwest. David Allen leverages their terrazzo specialization to be able to grow. So there is some strategic thinking. I know that Bonnets, you go onto their website and it talks about their strategic leadership restructuring. It talks about their focus. It talks about employee ownership as a weapon to get engagement. And, they have a different metric system within the business as to how they measure and drive successful performance. So, these people have thought a little bit about that, and we'll start to dissect some of their strategies going forward. But I do want to echo your point, Andre, that as a commercial flooring company, just thinking, oh, well, if we could grow 5% from where we are this year, next year, doesn't equate to strategic thinking. And perhaps we can stimulate some of that conversation, on this show and going forward.
Mick, and I just while we're talking about gorillas and all of that, just to share some numbers. I sort of like, not that I can count much, but sort of like just getting an idea about numbers. So just a little extract from one of the StarNet benchmark reports of recent times, and they sort of had a segmented between businesses that are like $10 million less, and then another segment of 10 to 20 million, and another segment of 20 to 40 million, and then sort of the 40 million plus. Now, even that segmentation on its own to me is interesting, because when you segment that sort of 40 million plus is like, that is the gorilla size, isn't that right?
Yeah.
I mean, so you're really looking at and the spaces between each segment, 10 to 20 million. I mean, relatively small spaces. But anyway, so if you think about it, and they talk about productivity as what is the dollar value per the dollar value per head based on gross margin, right? So that's the which I mean, I'm not saying that's there's no comment as to whether that's a good metric or not, but that's really where they believe is a nice way to look at productivity. But if you just look at it a little bit differently based on revenue, right? So I'll just give you two numbers. The revenue per employee, all right? So that's non-direct employees. It's not the guys that are part of the installation process. So it's more, the people that are, in everything else other than installation, let's call it. Revenue per employee, 500,000, but 500, it really is 520,000. So somewhere around there. So if you $10 million or less, but $520,000 of revenue per employee, that's roughly your.
It can't be $520,000 per employee.
Yeah, roughly.
That's $500,000 per employee.
Yep, roughly per revenue, huh?
$500,000 per employee. So if you've got 10 employees, you think it would be a $5 million business?
Yeah, a little bit, somewhere around there.
Okay.
12 employees, somewhere around there.
Right.
That's roughly what it is. All right. So then when you look at the larger category, it's more like 900,000.
Wow, that's a big jump.
Now, okay, so you think about it. All right, now I know a lot of these statistics, are a little bit all over the place, but and this is not exactly in alignment to what we've seen. So I'm just using more public type data, so it's not in alignment to what we've seen. But just what I'm really talking about is more the difference in what scale does. So you've got about a 60%, nearly 60 to 70% increment in revenue when you are larger, right? So that is something that is going to be industry impactful. That and this is something that I've noticed is which types of companies truly grow. And the one thing that I think is what's it called, where everybody does the same thing is the one thing that is similar to everyone, the one characteristic that's similar is investment. Those companies that invest typically seem to grow. And that is one thing that I do notice in the industry. There's many company owners that are very, very how can I say, investment shy, because there's a degree of risk. They don't see the opportunity.
They're kind of risk averse. Abby was asking another question when you were doing your general productivity measure of revenue per employee. Were you including installers in that number?
No, there was no installers in that.
Okay.
No. So if you've got in-house installers, that would not include. I mean, I went to the StarNet, definition, and they said that did not include, installation heads per se.
Yeah, and guys, kudos to you, StarNet, for putting together that, because it is difficult. Thank you for sharing your benchmark data with your members. Hopefully, you won't mind us using one or two little snippets. It might attract people to join your great community.
Oh yeah, no, that's a great, and I think that's so fuse. I mean, we've got some really great, I think very active, some great people that have been in and out of StarNet, which we really have had a good relationship there, which is nice. But so that's the thing, so size. All I'm trying to say here is two things that I think we're going to talk a lot about. Size matters, all right. In this business, size does matter. And number two, investment matters. So, when we talk about things that matter, size and investment matter. So, if you're small and you want to grow, you're going to need to think about, the way that you invest. Unfortunately, that is part of the problem. So we'll have a good conversation around that. But for today, that's my opinion. So
all right. Well, look. So just as a little that was a little teaser on some of the benchmarks. One of the things that we have done is that we've assimilated. So we've been behind the scenes on a lot of companies over 15 years. Looking at their numbers, being inside, getting very, very intimate. And we've created our own benchmark report, which we think shares some information that you can't get anywhere else. So I'm going to show you, how to get it. Here we are. This is the Flooring by the Numbers website. So if you go to flooringbythenumbers.com, you'll see that top menu bar, and you see, 2 steps over from the contact us bar, you see something called benchmark. So if I click on that benchmark menu item, it takes you to this. This is the Flooring by the Numbers commercial benchmark report that we've compiled. So you click on this button here, get your benchmark report, and it takes you to this little, just let me know your company name, your first name, last name, your email. You click that to sign up for your benchmark report. And, ultimately what that will do is it will give you this flooring by the numbers commercial benchmark report. There's gold in this report. You can find things there that you cannot find anywhere else. And, I don't want to go through this detailed benchmark or any of the metrics today, but we just wanted to just take a moment to ask the question, well, what is the use of a benchmark anyway, Andre? I know you have a lot of energy about this.
Yeah, I mean, here's the thing is that, I think there's so much value out of sharing best practice, so, and I know that's one of the things that is, I think it is relatively dear to many of this community, because, best practices are fairly, are not really well, publicized, let's call it. People don't really understand, okay, if I do certain things, the cause and effect of doing certain things. And yes, we talk a lot about those standard benchmarks. We've tried to dig a lot deeper. Okay, we've got a different productivity metrics. We've got different ways of understanding, the more granular things with inside the business. And there it is. It's free. I mean, hey, it's not like, hey, I don't know whether most people, charge a lot of money for these things. No wonder we're hungry. But yeah, so please. I mean, and here's the thing. I'm not ashamed to ask people to sign up on our website. Yeah, we want people to sign up. I think we give a reasonably good, our weekly blog that we send out to everybody. We talk about different techniques in terms of, how do we make our business better? So, what are the three things we talk about, Mick? What are the three things our flooring company needs to do?
What are the three things that we focus on?
Yeah, there you are.
Yeah, I mean, we know that successful companies need to do three things, right?
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
Number one, they need to make money in terms of profitability. Number two, they need to generate predictable cash, stay in business.
Very important, right?
And number three, they've got to put in systems to build wealth long term. In other words, you're not grinding forever, and if you stop, there would be nothing left. You're building an asset that ultimately you can pass on to the employees. You could sell, whatever you would like to do that. So those are the three things that successful business are. When in our report, we're looking at the behavioral characteristics that drive profitable revenue growth, which makes money. We're looking at the behaviors that the organization does from an administration perspective, or how the salespeople work with their customers in order to make sure that those receivable days, so there'll be a receivable average days number and a best practice number. Well, it's interesting to know, and you can calculate the value for your company of what's the best receivable number versus what yours is, but you're more interested in, okay, what are the behaviors that I need to inculcate in my organization to drive us towards that number? So the benchmark kind of says, hey, there's opportunity. Then you want to know, okay, what do I need to do to realize it? So we'd be talking about what are the behaviors of your salespeople, what are the behaviors of your collections, etc., in order to go after that. That's what you were talking about, really, about getting behind the benchmark.
And the thing I love is our definition of wealth. Okay, so here's the strange thing. Is our definition of wealth is your ability to do less so others can do more. And, I know this sounds so damn cliche, but the ability for you to spend time working on your business as opposed to in your business. The one thing that we found is I think it's the ADD concept. You know what I mean? The ability to have a meeting anything longer than 5 minutes, Nick, is like there's no way you can plan a meeting for longer than 5 minutes, because boy, everybody is doing something else after 5. You know what I mean? So to keep the attention of anybody here is really hard, and people love what they do, but they don't really like thinking about the way that they are going to do things differently. And I mean, just going back to Chuck Bodie's, I think it was in 2019, before the thing, he said there was 10 things that, he felt was, important to the industry, right? And I mean, you've got to give it to the guy. He really had he has incredible insight, and I know he runs a great ship, but you sort of some of the things that was really mentioned in those days. He said he predicted that change is something that's going to happen. And I really, so I liked somebody. For those of you who saw his 10 things, that's something that's very interesting to see. I mean, this is nearly 2 years ago. How some of those really insights have become more and more prevalent within the industry.
Hey, Andre.
Yes, sir.
Do you have this presentation? Do you have those 10 things written down anywhere?
Yeah, I have them somewhere. Give me.
Not for today, but what will be interesting will be to see what he forecasted was important then, and let's just do a little look at those. I think that might be something interesting we could do in our blog.
Yeah, I must say, and here definitely. I mean, you've got to give it. Chuck, in my opinion, is one of the thought leaders. He's the chairman of StarNet, and how he and I think he has a very bold approach. He likes to be a little bit provocative, and I think some of that was really.
So we should get him on the show as a guest.
There you are. So we just try to, there's our introduction. We haven't given him a formal invite, but hopefully we will get him as a guest. So
I was reading something just yesterday, Andre, and the author was making a very germane point for this conversation. He said that because most people think their most critical resource is time. They don't have enough time. And the author was positing that, no, it's not time, it's focus, to your point around ADD. So a lot of people just try and, mash as much as they can into their day. And it's a bit like Groundhog Day, and they do the same thing over and over, as opposed to taking a step back and saying, what could I do differently? Or what really on the 80-20 is delivering most of the result? And how do I focus on that? So thinking about the strategic things that are important and working on those rather than letting your day get away from you and things overwhelming you is a good way of strategically, leveraging your talent and time, which gets, this scant attention spent focusing. So focus versus time is a thing to think about.
Yeah, no doubt. And on top of that, the way that you develop your people is really important. So I think that's the, those are some of the key things that we got to think about. So anyway, Mick, and I think so. What can people expect going forward? I mean, we're nearly towards the end of the show, and so just to give people a little bit of a feel for what are we gonna be doing going forward.
Right. So we would appreciate any feedback from you guys have stayed with us. The actual people on the call didn't go down during the hour, Andre. You'll be pleased to know. We're not yet into the millions.
I promise you that means that they forgot to turn it off. That's all it means.
We're not into the millions of viewers yet, but So what we wanted to do is to go into some of those subjects in more detail where we've seen really good practice we want to bring that to the show and really help, explain how you might implement some of those. So we'll have some very focused best practices episodes. And also what I want, is for us to, have people come in from our audience and be guests on the show. So I'd like to, we're going to see some flooring owners we're going to invite on. I want to see some emerging sales leaders in those organizations. I want some top salespeople to come on and talk about their tips. And also I want to have some, we're going to get some GC, construction VPs to come on and say, how easy is it to work with flooring companies, and what do they really value, to give you some ideas as how you can interact with your customers more effectively. And similarly, we hear a lot in this industry about price protection, and somebody's got a better deal. Vendor strategies, very important. I want to get some of the vendors on the show and talk about some of their frustrations and how they can help you be more effective. So we're going to look at both ends of the value chain, from your customers to your suppliers, as well as the best practices and thoughts from leaders in your industry. And as I say, if you want to be a guest, we're open for business right now. So that's it.
Nice. And we're going to have a lot of, one thing I'd like to do a lot of is some of those myth busters, you know what I mean? Or also, what belief busters, I think maybe is the better word, the certain beliefs that are in the system, even when it comes to margins, I mean, how many times, hey, Mick, have we heard salespeople say, well, if my margin is greater than 30%, I'm gouging the customer. Can you believe this?
Yeah.
It's just, there's some crazy stuff that's out there, and we're going to we've got to bust some of those belief systems,
Right.
And we're going to talk about, the belief system around growth, and the belief system around margins, and the belief system around, how do I
Andre, you my favorite, we get paid when the GC gets paid.
Oh man, what a
we have an whole episode on that.
No, absolutely.
Hey, Andre, shout out to Chuck, our second interaction there. He said some very kind words, and he gave us the facts. 175 beautiful members in the StarNet community.
Look at it. They've added some. That must be because of Chuck's, good looks, I think.
Yeah, and you know what? I was talking to Rob Starr just yesterday, and StarNet are rolling out their new website offer to allow members to be able to represent themselves well. I'm not doing justice to the value proposition, but I know that's a big initiative for StarNet, and I spoke to Rob Starr, and he might be able to come on the show in April and talk a little bit about that initiative. So I know StarNet, very busy, very, very active. I know Fuse had their meeting last week, and they're very, very busy. And one thing we'll talk about, we're going to have, our own conference, the Flooring by the Numbers conference. It's going to be in Charlotte, probably in May. So we'll tell you a little bit more about that, where we can get into some of the benchmark data, some of those best practice. Oh, and Abby's just told us 130 people in Fuse, and she says, thank you for the show. So we're right up against the hour. I know we could talk forever. Thank you for your patience and being with us. This is an entirely new experiment and a new experience. We want to serve you. So if you want to email us, you can email me or leave some comments. I'm sure I'm in all of your inboxes. We send out a weekly blog. If you're not getting it, it's awesome. Andre writes it, and then I write it in English.
Yeah, I have no English capability.
But check your spam folder. It's going to come from Mick, M-I-C-K, at scienceofbusinesswealth.com. We're in the middle of, we used to do a lot of work with different kind of businesses. So Science of Business Wealth was was more appropriate. Now we're flooring by the numbers, but it will be in your inbox, mick@scienceofbusinesswealth.com, or you can connect with me or Andre on LinkedIn, and we post our blogs on LinkedIn. We've got really valuable stuff that would help you. Check that out. And any guidance you want to give us, you can find us on LinkedIn or in your inbox on your email. Go get the benchmark report. Rip it apart. Tell us what you don't like. Tell us what you don't believe. Tell us why you're better than all of those. We love it. So from me, thank you, Andre.
Thank you, guys. Have a great one. Hey, geez, that was a long show. Sure.
Hey, and see you next week. Same time, same back channel.
Very well. All the best, guys. Cheers, man.